Chris, congratulations on your recent Emmy nomination for Bates Motel. It was your second career nomination, if I'm correct. So, first of all, tell us how it felt when you heard you'd gotten the news you'd been nominated. It was your first nomination for this show, and you've been there since the beginning. So,
Yeah, thank you, first of all. I had a vague kind of notion that the announcements were coming up, but I hadn't thought about it beyond that. And that morning I got up, I had a whole bunch to do that day, so I sat down to kind of dive in early. And I started getting all these Facebook messages that didn't say much other than, "Hey, congratulations, congratulations." And I had no idea. So I responded to one and said, "Hey, what are you talking about?" Nomination. So really, and so then I kind of did this kind of mad search, but it was harder than I thought to find until I saw it kind of official. I was like, "Oh, sweet!" So it actually was real. But yeah. So thank you, world of Facebook, for letting me know. And yeah, it's a gratifying feeling. It's not one that yeah, I never. I think most people would say this. You never go into the work thinking, "Oh, this is it." You know, this is I'm writing this for the awards, but it is gratifying to have it recognized, especially when there is so much good TV being done with good TV music. So yeah, it's there is a sense of satisfaction, at least to kind of affirm that the work is good, I hope.
Well, the music branch of the TV Academy thinks so.
Right.
Let's talk a bit about you've been with the show since the first season. We're now in season 4. So, how has your work developed as the show has developed?
The anytime you start out a show in the pilot, everybody from the actors to the writers to the editor to everything, you're kind of trying to figure out what it is. And you generally, if you're doing a film, you generally have a little bit more time to go back and forth and try things and throw different sounds against the screen and you see what sticks, see what fits. In this case, you typically have that luxury of a lot more time, so it's kind of like crank it out and go with it. But then what happens is as you go along, 5, 6, however many episodes in, you kind of get a feel for who the characters are. You get a feel for the tone of the story and what the voice of the show is. And so I think that certainly happened with the score. And it's been fun to evolve with that. And in my opinion, I think it fits the most because it's not a horror show. And it doesn't need a particularly scary score. There's certain spots where you want that, but there's more of a sense of psychological emotion. I don't even know what that means, but that's what it is. And so trying to find that world where we're staying true to the real feeling the love that Norma and Norman Bates have for each other is as kind of twisted and misdirected as it is, to try to be true to that musically in a way where you can feel that there is authenticity to it, even if it is kind of in a twisted, dark way.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also based on this little movie that maybe a few people have seen, with kind of a memorable score by this famous composer, Bernard Herrmann. So in those early days, were you, I think what's extraordinary is that there's no, there's not a lot of reference to that music in your work. So I'm just curious in the early days if that was ever a consideration of yours, or if you were ever kind of worried about living under the shadow of that.
Well, I mean, living under the shadow of Bernard Herrmann is not much you're doing, is always going to be something. But there were discussions early on about how this was not intended to be an homage, or it's not a prequel in the sense of you're trying to be true to an established mythology. And first clue being is that it's set today in contemporary. So let me just turn this phone off. Sorry, one second.
Oh yeah, no problem.
So being that it's set today is a clue that it's not, and it's not in black and white, and it's kind of creating its own thing, its own kind of entry into that world. And we wanted the music to be the same. For some part of the reason is that the score for the original was and is so iconic and iconically attached to the movie. That I don't know that it was going to serve us in creating our own kind of world and story to use something that already has such an iconic identity. That, and it's Bernard Herrmann, and it don't necessarily want to try to sound like a cheap knockoff. And it's, that being said, it's inherently kind of part of my musical identity because he is such an influence on me, or has been at least. So even if I'm not trying to do that, I know sometimes it creeps in just because we as composers are kind of the sum total of everything we've ever heard. Mm-hmm. And you find ways to do different combinations and try different things and to focus in on your own voice. But it's still there for sure. But it has never been our intention to try to connect the two worlds musically from the movie and the TV show.
Mm-hmm. And I think you can say that about any artist, be it a composer or a director or writer. Obviously the things that made you want to get into those fields are going to influence you later on. So there's certainly some Hitchcockian undertones to the show as a whole. It's hard to get away from that.
Yeah, exactly.
But you guys have definitely, in this, as it's gone on, you've become your own thing in a very real way. Let's talk a bit about this episode that you're nominated for. It was the 9th episode of the season, called Forever. Mm-hmm. Talk about why you submitted that episode, first of all.
I don't know. Yeah, it seemed like an important episode in the pantheon of things, and it is, because, spoiler alert, Norman's mother dies. And over the course of the series, we knew it was coming to this, because as much as we're trying to establish our own identity separate from the movie, it's still that world, it's still those characters, and from the movie that barring some sort of crazy departure, that Norman's mother is going to end up stuffed in the basement, right? So we knew it was kind of coming to this, and we finally got here, and it was something I didn't know how they were going to do it, but they treated it very emotionally and very earnestly, in that it's the only death, or the only time that Norman, I believe, kills somebody as Norman, where he's not kind of inhabited by this alter ego mother character or blacked out. And so there was I think a heightened sense of, I think the word emotion is used too much, and I've certainly used it too much today, but there's a lot of that here, right, in this episode. And being that the last 4 or 5 whatever minutes of music of that pivotal scene is mostly score, and it's thematic, and I don't know, it just seemed like it was, because it's kind of a crapshoot when you submit this kind of thing anyway, because you don't know, it's so subjective. Music is so subjective, mm-hmm. And the quality of a given episode or a given show, or of whatever your medium is, the quality of whatever it is that you're writing music for can have a direct influence on the perception of the music, and vice versa. So it's just kind of a guess. But I think people, I should say, I respond to this one, and let's see if other people respond to it as well. And I guess they did.
How do you accentuate that emotion through your music?
Well, the great thing about this show is that the emotion is there on screen, because the acting is very top shelf. Freddie Highmore and Vera Farmiga and the rest of the cast as well, but they especially kind of create these emotional just whirlwinds that are, I can only imagine how exhausting it is to play them, because it feels, for as kind of extreme as they are, it still feels real. It feels relatable in a weird way. Even though most of us, I don't think, have this kind of crazy internal love affair with our mother or something. But there's something that feels real about it. And in this case, especially given that the buildup that had been to this point, and it immediately follows a very touching scene without music between Norma and Norman as he puts her to bed and basically sings her a lullaby. So we're already kind of in that world of connection between the two. So in this case, I felt like it needed to not, even though it's a dark kind of topic of he's asphyxiating his mother on purpose, and her husband is walking in and discovering them basically dead, asphyxiated. It still felt like it had to be, because we're ahead of the game. We know what's happened because we've seen him go through and shut all the vents, and we know what that's going to do. So rather than play the kind of reality of Romero when he discovers it, it's more about playing the through line of, this is the moment that we've known was coming through the series. We've known that at some point his mother was going to die, and we suspected it was going to be at his hand. And to have it follow such a kind of sweet, bittersweet scene, it just felt like it had to be play the more authentic emotion of it rather than everything that we're seeing. From a kind of start to finish to 4.5 whatever minute length it was, not being so scory of each individual moment, but of playing it as a broad kind of confirmation that this is indeed what is happening and what has finally happened. And it gets pretty big. When we finally got to an over-the-shoulder shot close-up of Romero performing CPR on Norma, it's, as far as a small TV show goes, it's pretty sweeping strings. But it felt like that's what the moment warranted for the size of the moment within the episode, within the show, and within the kind of pantheon of the whole universe.
Mm-hmm. Well, since you've been with the show since the very beginning, you've established a lot of themes and musical motifs. So is it still a challenge to come up with new things, or are you pulling from things that you've previously established, or how does that work?
Yes. It's I think the challenge, because there are a lot of existing threads, there's a lot of material, there are a lot of themes, and the hard thing with anything like this is, for example, if you played most people the themes from Star Wars, they'd recognize them as Star Wars. But I bet most people wouldn't be able to say, oh, that's Luke's theme, that's the Force theme, that's Leia's theme, et cetera, et cetera. That they're just thematically connected to that universe. And so I think that's happened in this show as well, where there are some character themes. In fact, what plays over Norma as she's having CPR is kind of her theme. It doesn't play for anybody else. It's related to her and her kind of family background. But most of them are connected to relationships. When Norman looks over and he sees that his mother is receiving CPR and he's still alive, goes to a solo piano, that is their theme. But yeah, so the hard part of this scene was deciding, all right, there are several kind of Bates Motel broad themes that fit the universe. There's several kind of broken family bits. There's the Norman theme. There's the Norma theme herself. So, and really, many of those could have worked in this scene because it is happening on a lot of levels. So that was probably I don't want to say the biggest part, but it was a very big part of what went into approaching that scene. was just from what point of view thematically to play it, and would it matter? And so I kind of felt, it felt like both thematically and musically, and just from a hey, I like this here type of point of view, that it felt like the right way to go. But yeah, that is a hard thing to kind of keep economy when there are so many kind of a bucket full of themes and ideas, and also, but balancing that with trying to keep it new and fresh. So yeah, well, so there's a really long-winded, I hope, answer to what was a pretty simple question.
No, you were great. So where do you see the show going from here on? I mean, we've lost a major character, unless we're going to see her stuffed in the basement.
Right. Well, where it goes, who knows? I mean, there's only 10 episodes left, which is actually quite sad for me, because it's on a lot of levels, it's a real pleasure to work on the show with the people involved. It's a very collaborative effort. It's a very affirming kind of process with people who really care about what they do, and people who trust each other to do the job well. So from that point of view, I'm going to be very sad to leave. Also sad to leave the characters behind, because they are so well performed and they are endearing in each their own way. As far as the actual dramatic, where is it going? I have a few ideas. In fact, I got to sit in the writer's room recently as they're kind of laying out an arc for season 5. But I'm pretty sure that I'd be cast off if I knew anything that was in that. But we know that Vera Farmiga isn't going away. She still exists as mother just as much now. It's just the point of view is going to be shifted, because she only now exists in Norman's world, in Norman's head, in his consciousness. So I'm very interested to see where that goes. So really, I really don't know where it's going. I don't know how it's going to end. We know that Marion Crane is going to show up, because they've announced that Rihanna is going to be playing Marion Crane. I'm very curious to see how that plays out as well. So we know it's going to intersect and kind of bump up against the Psycho universe, but they've shown a willingness to play with the narrative before. So are we going to have a shower scene with Rihanna? I don't know, but there are certainly a lot of possibilities set up. I mean, how does it end for Norman, or does it end for Norman? I don't know. So there are a lot of loose ends but they have about 10 episodes to tie up. I'm excited to see as a fan and as a composer.
As am I. So thank you so much, and congratulations on your nomination, and it was a pleasure talking with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.